Back to the show. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, government says it is talking to telecommunication giants in a bid to reduce the cost of data and also increase coverage, particularly in deprived communities, to help drive government digitization agenda. This was disclosed by Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia yesterday. His call comes in the wake of complaints by some customers who are worried about the percentage of their income that are being used to buy data. Some of them have been speaking to JoyNews, and they say they need government intervention.
10 cedis a day, yeah. Some few minutes. Because from WhatsApp to Instagram to Facebook, Google, it takes a lot. So just some few hours. Now the data runs really fast. So I think something should be done about it because it runs very fast. And then it makes us waste a lot of money buying credits and stuff.
Normally I do the 3 Ghana cedis bundle a day. Yeah. I consume data a lot, so it takes me roughly 24 hours. But you have an option to, renew over a period of 3 hours or so, yeah. So it can last more than a day, but I use the 500 MB within a day, yeah. A week, roughly, maybe 50 Ghana cedis.
50 Ghana cedis?
Yes, just on data, yeah.
Interesting. And what do you think in general, given this experience of data issues in Ghana?
I hear there's a communication tax that has come into effect. It's been raised from 6 to 9%, if I'm correct. So it means people who use, especially the daily bundles, would have to spend, let's say, 2 times of that, because when you bundle within 24 hours, it might take you 3 hours, then you consume all the data. So people who use more data, I think it's going to be a bit more tough for them these days. So they would have to at least cut down.
Well, personally, I bundle 3 cedis a day, and the network I use demands that I bundle that way to be able to manage it, within 24 hours. And it normally gives me 500 megabytes. So that's what I use every day. 3 cedis, 500 megabytes per the network I use.
Do you think it gives you value for money?
Well, I would say yes, it gives him value for money, but sometimes its duration depends on how best you use you serve the internet, and I think it gives me value for money.
It gets finished early. Why? Because I don't know how they do the internet connections. Because you might do 5 cedis today, within 2 days it gets finished, and I don't think it's right.
Within 2 days, 5 cedis?
It just gets finished, and they have to do something about it.
So those are some data users. I am myself a data user. They're complaining about how much we're spending buying data. Well, Dr. Bawumia has been giving some assurances. As he says, discussions are underway with telecommunications companies to cut down the cost of data. He was speaking at an event on Tuesday evening at the National Theatre in Accra.
Just this morning, I had a meeting with Selom, and our question was how we bring down the cost of data and how to increase coverage, because the whole roadmap towards digitization centers around some of these critical questions, and we brainstormed a bit on the best way forward, and we'll continue to brainstorm. And I think that they're very, very clear in trying to bring down the cost of data. Government will also have to make spectrum a bit more easily available and all of that. So we've been talking about how to really get this whole digital economy moving, and I hope that we will get, if we work together, that is really the key. For government, we just have to help the private sector get the things done for us. And this is what the digital transformation is really largely a private sector driven matter. If we just put some support behind the private sector, they will get a lot of things done for us. It is my expectation that we can use IT to build community databases on prescriptions and medications to complement their health records in the hospitals.
Well, that's the Vice President yesterday. A member of the Communications Committee in Parliament, Sam George, says discussions between the telecommunication companies have rather focused on charging more. Sam George joins us now in the studio. Mr. George, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
How is your campaign going, by the way?
We're about 9 days out, and so it hit pitch fever.
Okay.
We're wrapping up basically a few meetings, and then we're done, good to go.
Is it looking good for you?
Oh, I'm confident of victory. I mean, there's no shadow of doubt in my mind. There's a lot of hubris and noise, but the elections are on the ground, the work is on the ground. When I contested Honorable Lieutenant, I tried to stay away from the media when it comes to my campaign, focus on the ground and do my speaking in the ballot.
Okay.
I'm here today as a sense of patriotism to speak the truth to authority. So I had to break the campaign, come here, from here, go back to the campaign.
We hear you. So now give us the basis upon which you disagree or upon which you are contesting the Vice President's claims that actually there is a discussion going on that's meant to cut down the cost that we pay for data.
Well, I would have said I would forgive the Vice President, but I can't. He's Vice President of the Republic. Before he reads a statement, he should have read it at first, because I want to believe, I saw from the insert you played, that he was reading a speech that had been reading for him.
Everybody reads speeches.
Yeah, but you want to read a speech before you go public.
But you don't know that. You don't know whether or not he read it.
I honestly don't think the Vice President would have said the things he said if he had read that speech prior.
Why?
If he did read a speech prior and came to repeat that in public, then that makes it even worse. It means our Vice President is a very dishonest person. Because you see, the ordinary Ghanaian will tell you that the cost of data today in Ghana is extremely high. Or even before the introduction of the 6%, a 50% increase in CST, it's extremely high. In fact, in March, at the end of March this year, the Vice President of the World Bank, Dr. Hafiz Ghanem, was in Ghana, and he met with the Minister for Communications, Madame Esla Owusu Ekofo. And one of the things he said, he complained about was the high cost of data in Ghana. In fact, Ghana has one of the highest cost of data in the developing world.
What I'm driving at really is for you to draw our attention to the reasons why you're contesting the claims by the Vice President that there is actually conversation going on.
I'm building
to deal with this problem.
I'm building that. Okay. I mean, he's made the claim that there are conversations to bring the cost down, and I'm saying that all of that is not true, because in March of this year, the communication minister, who is actually responsible for the sector, made a commitment to Mr. Hafiz Ghanem when he met her and complained about the cost of data in Ghana, that government was going to take proactive steps by way of policy to force the hand of private sector to drop the cost. The only step that government has taken since that meeting was the introduction of a 50% increase in the communication service tax from 6% to 9%, 50% increase. Now, that 50% increase cannot lead to a drop in price. Now, the background to this CST is that CST was introduced in 2008 by President Kufuor. We called it a talk tax at the time. When it was introduced, government engaged the telcos. The telcos agreed to absorb the 6% and did not pass it on to customers at the time. However, I can state on authority, I can tell you that over the past 2 weeks, all the telcos have been engaged, their marketing teams, sales and marketing teams, have been engaged in brainstorming sessions on how to pass on the cost. They've made it clear to government they will not absorb this 50% cost, because already the telecom industry is one of the most highly taxed industries in Ghana. 40%, when you buy 10 cedis credit, 4 cedis of that is taxes. 4 cedis, 40% of whatever we spend on our telephones or data is taxes. So already government has put, for every 10 cedis a Ghanaian spends, government has put in taxes to the tune of 4 cedis. If those taxes were not there, we would have been paying 6 cedis. Now government is increasing the CST, which is one component of that 40% tax, by 50%.
Okay.
Now, if they refuse, and so what they've been doing is actually to look at how the billing mechanism will be. Because you see, customers are already used to, you spoke to your people on the street who spoke about bundles. So someone is used to doing a 3 CD bundle that he said gave him 500 megabytes.
Yes.
Now what the telcos are doing is that they're looking at how to pass on that 50% increase.
Again, we don't know that. I don't know that. You're saying
I operate in the industry, and I'm saying this to you. I'm saying that you can speak to the telcos, you can speak to MTN, you can speak to Airtel Tigo, you can speak to Vodafone,
and they'll tell us that they are actually having meetings,
they are having conversations on how to do the billing
extra 3%.
right now. And I'm saying to you that over the past 2 weeks, all the telcos have had their sales teams sit down to look at how they will remodel the billing. Because what the challenge here now is, if I'm used to getting 500 megabytes for 3 CDs, if I want my 500 megabytes, the telcos now want to charge me 3 CDs plus the 50% increase in the CST. So I'm going to pay maybe 3 CDs, 20 pesos. I am not used to that. So do they maintain the 3 CDs? And then instead of giving me 500 megabytes, they will give me 480 or 470. I am also used to paying 3 CDs for this amount. So that is the conversation that they're looking at. Or do they then increase the usage charge such that, you know, there's a base rate for it, for data, even though you don't see it like your voice call, where you say maybe it's 19 cents for international call or 6 cents for local call or whatever. What happens with data is, for every megabyte, there is a base price. So what do we then do? The base price will determine if I still give you 500 megabytes at 3 CDs, and maybe it could last you for maybe a day.
Now it's going to be half a day.
Or maybe 18 hours. Those are the things that they're looking at. How do you go about this such that the telcos do not bear the brunt of this? Because the telcos are bleeding. They are bleeding. And they cannot continue to absorb the cost. And so they want to find a way of pushing this on. And this goes to
we have the impression that most Ghanaians have, including myself, is that the telcos are not bleeding, as you say. The impression is that they're making a lot of money because we're buying a lot of data. We're making a lot of calls on a daily basis.
The reality is that MTN is the only telco that in the past 10 years, has declared profit.
I see.
None of the other telcos. And MTN controls almost 60% of the market, if not more.
All right.
And so back to what Vice President Bawumia said.
When you say that, you know, within the telcos, they're discussing how to pass on this 3% extra. It doesn't necessarily mean that when government says it is having a conversation to reduce the cost we pay for data, it is untrue.
What conversation will you have with people?
Do you know what conversation they're having?
The point here is simple, Gifty. You ask me to provide a service, okay? And then you increase the cost of raw material to me. And I'm supposed to provide the service to Araba. Now I decide that, okay, I would absorb that cost. Now you want me to drop further the cost at which I'm giving to Araba. You're not leaving me at the same price level where I was giving Araba that already you think is too expensive for Araba. You are increasing the cost of what you are giving to me.
What makes you think that is not a possibility in this case?
It makes no business sense. That's what I'm saying to you. The telcos are not even making profit given the current tax regime. Given the current tax regime, only MTN has, in a number of years, just a few number of years in the past 10 years, declared profit. Okay? All the other telcos are posting losses. Now, with them posting losses, you are increasing their overhead cost. Don't forget that this year, the telcos are also going to be going again into negotiations over the renewal of their spectrum licenses. It's going to come at cost to them. The overhead cost for telcos is huge. So there's the assumption that telcos make a lot of money. But like I said to you, for every 10 CDs you give to a telco, government is taking 4 CDs. So you must bear in mind that the telco doesn't get the 10 CDs, they get only 6 CDs because government gleans off 40% of whatever they make. Okay. Now the point here is that if Dr. Bawumia, and I heard him in the interview play, talk about bridging the digital divide. If you want to bridge the digital gap, the places where we do not have coverage, the black spots in the country today are predominantly in rural Ghana. The earning power of rural Ghana is lower than urban Ghana. This is not disputable. People in rural Ghana earn less than urban Ghana. People in urban Ghana are complaining about the cost of data as it stands now.
People in urban Ghana are complaining because we've had people in urban Ghana, but it doesn't mean that people in rural Ghana aren't complaining either.
Gift is just common sense. It's logic.
No,
that if you earn more,
not necessarily. You say that they're not complaining, and I'm saying that just because we have not heard them.
I haven't said rural Ghana is not complaining. I haven't said so. I said urban Ghana is complaining.
It's complaining.
And rural Ghana earns less than urban Ghana.
Right.
And so if urban Ghana that even earns more is complaining, you can imagine what rural Ghana that earns less will be feeling.
Okay.
So you can, it's fair to assume that rural Ghana is equally feeling the pinch.
Fair enough.
Now, that is where you do not have enough access. You want to send in towers there so that they can get access to telco services. Now, telecom services, even though communication is becoming a necessity, in rural Ghana, it is still a luxury. It is not a basic necessity. So when you want to bridge the digital divide, you must make it in countries that have bridged the digital divide, like South Africa, like Kenya, like Rwanda. What they have done is to incentivize rural communities to use telecom services.
I think part of what he says is also that to widen the reach, widen the reach of internet in these rural communities.
The point is, you widen the
point he makes that they're working on that. I mean,
let me break down what work is going on in there. In those areas, the telcos will not go and put their mast there because of the cost of operating the mast. If the cost of operating the mast and revenue from that cell site do not match, it makes no business sense for them to put it in. That is why we had the gov't initiative, the Ghana Infrastructure Fund for Electronic Communication, where all the telcos put together 1% of their net revenue and give to government. And government uses it to do those kinds of interventions. Government builds those cell sites and then the telcos just go and co-locate there. Now, gov't has done private sector partnerships with individuals who want to go in there. You want to build a cell site today, it's about $70,000. So you go, you partner with gov't, they give you a location, they acquire the land, you buy the equipment and they set it up. And then you do a profit sharing with the telco. Many of those who have gone in the first 200 are not posting profit, so nobody is going in again. Now the point here is the only way you would make profit from those cell sites to recover the cost is when people buy the airtime and use the airtime. Now if the cost of making phone calls and the cost of data is going up and not going down, even at this current rate, people in urban Ghana cannot buy. How much more rural Ghana? Then you increase the price. How then do you expect usage? You see, it's a matter of usage.
I get what you say, but the bottom line is that it still doesn't necessarily negate the point that he makes that they're having a discussion. Maybe from your analysis, the discussion may not yield. Hold on. Maybe from your discussion, from your analysis, the discussion they're having may not yield that result where the cost is going to go down. But it doesn't mean that there isn't such a conversation going on.
It is just common logic that
I see the logic in there. But I see the logic in there, but it doesn't change the fact.
I'm saying that we didn't vote and elect a president and his vice.
It doesn't change the fact that there could be conversations or arrangements, negotiations going on.
Gifty, we did not vote in the Nana-Addo Bawumia government to have conversations. We voted them to fix problems.
But fixing problems means that you have to start a process. So everything is a process, isn't it?
Gifty, if you're having a process that has a certain hope of success, I'll be excited. Okay? So if you tell me today that, oh, Sam George, to help your campaign, I would put you on 2 days to your campaign and give you 30 minutes to sell your message. Because I know you sit on a platform, you have a platform, I have a hope that possibly when you talk to production, you can get me a 30-minute slot. Okay? But if a guy who sells coconuts on the streets and has no access to your studios tells me he's going to give me airtime on Pulse, what hope do I have?
The scenarios are different.
They're not different.
The scenarios are different.
Government does not control the pricing mechanisms of the telcos. It's a free market economy.
But it is. But government is still government. Government makes the policies to regulate the industry.
And you cannot force the hand of private sector when you are increasing taxes. You are increasing taxes and asking them to drop their prices. In which industry does it work? In which economic theory? I mean, all of Dr. Bawumia's economic lectures, there is none that shows that when you increase taxation, prices will drop. All the lectures he gave in opposition, none of his economic theories goes to that. So my argument here is that you cannot tell us that you are giving us hope based on conversations you are having. When the people you're having the conversations with are telling you that, look, for me to drop the prices, the current tax regime has to drop. You are not thinking of dropping it. You are actually increasing it.
Well, at
and
this
asking
point,
them to drop it.
At this point, and right here on this platform, I have not heard the telcos complaining. I have not heard.
Well, I can state for record that the telcos have met with the Parliamentary Select Committee on Communications.
Okay.
We have invited them. I have actually, at my instigation, an appeal to the then chairman, Honorable Kennedy Japan. we invited all the telcos over the cost of data. I put it out on my social media handle. Anybody who wants to check can check. Earlier this year, we asked them to come in and justify the high cost of data. When they came to us, they said to us, look, it is the cost of operation, the cost of doing business, electricity, government taxes, fiber cuts. These are the reasons why our internet is expensive. The telcos have told us this as representatives of the people. And I have relayed that back to the people who went on my Facebook wall and complained about the instances of data charges. So if the telcos have told us that it is government policy that is affecting the cost of data, and government policy, as reviewed in July, a few weeks ago by the finance minister, is to add on more taxes to that sector, you cannot possibly expect a reduction in prices. It's not possible.
Fair arguments. Fair arguments. Again, let me ask you, assuming you were in government, what would you have done about this situation?
Look, if you look at the rationale that was given for the increase in CST, it is clear to you that it is not a necessity. It's only it's not a necessity based on the needs of the sector, but it is basically to help government raise revenue to repay debt. Because all the new interventions, there was the ESLA one, there were about 3 tax interventions that government introduced. 96% of the revenue from that, based on what the finance minister told us, was to help repay debt. So including the CST. In 2018, CST alone at 6% gave government 420 million Ghana cedis. So you're having an increase of 50% of that. That's at least another 210 million Ghana cedis. Okay, part of the CST is being used to finance youth employment and NAPCO. Fine. But the question you ask is, what is the justification? They told us they want to bridge the digital gap. You don't need an increase in CST to bridge the digital gap. You have GIFEC getting 1% of net revenue from all the telcos. They said they want to build a cybersecurity authority. You already have a cybersecurity framework. There's a cybersecurity secretariat at the moment. You want to build an authority. The authority is not going to be responsible for running sets.
It's not just an authority they want to build. I've engaged the National Cybersecurity Advisor right here, and he's explained the sort of infrastructure that we need to protect our cyberspace.
I have had that conversation with Albert, and he respects my position also. And my position is simple, that he's speaking fine English to justify government policy. Because there are international best practices. The cybersecurity authority is going to be like the NCA. And let me give you the scenario I always create. The NCA is a regulator. The cybersecurity authority, when the bill comes, and bear in mind, a bill has not even come to Parliament.
When you say authority, because when you mention authority is different from when they talk about an entire infrastructure, which perhaps is headed by the authority. This is the explanation. We need to get the explanation.
I've heard this. Don't let us use jargons to confuse you and your viewers.
Nobody is using jargons to confuse
when
everybody.
They talk about infrastructure,
what we're doing here is trying to break it down for everybody else to understand. If maybe you understand to some extent, but my viewers, some of them do not understand.
So allow me to explain to them.
Exactly.
When the whole thing in the budget talks about a cybersecurity authority, not an infrastructure authority. Now the cybersecurity is to fund a cybersecurity authority. The cybersecurity authority, as has been explained by the deputy minister and Albert, who is the advisor, is that they want to put in place an infrastructure for cybersecurity. That would suggest that we don't currently have an infrastructure. And that is not true. Albert is paid every month as a national cybersecurity advisor. For what? If there is no infrastructure, what is he advising on? We already have a joint interministerial working committee on cybersecurity.
Do you sincerely feel...
Can I land? If you give me just 1 minute, let me land, please. Currently, you have a set. A set is a computer emergency response team. You have one set at NCA that takes care of our telecom sector. You have a military set that takes care of our security services. Bank of Ghana runs a set. Currently, we have at least 8 different sets with infrastructure. Gifty, just take the 2019 budget and look at government expenditure on ICT through its agencies. It's in excess of 1 billion Ghana cedis. All of that infrastructure is what? That they tell you now need infrastructure. So are they saying to us that currently the telecom sector has no set, there's no cybersecurity infrastructure? Are they saying the banks don't have a cybersecurity infrastructure? Joy FM, you operate a media house, you have service. Don't you have firewalls and cybersecurity infrastructure?
Look, there are
go to NITA, the National Data Center. There is a set there.
So Mr. George, take advanced countries. They still have. Recently, Germany had their system hacked. So talk about all these advanced countries who have, I'm told there are 5 levels of cybersecurity. people who have reached the 5th level. We are, I'm told, at the 2nd level. So talk about these countries who have reached the peak, who are still being hacked. So when you talk about Ghana, I was going to ask you whether you sincerely believe that we really are there when it comes to cybersecurity and that we don't need any sort of intervention to strengthen it any further.
You don't need a new tax to strengthen your cybersecurity apparatus.
So bottom line is you do need,
to help the conversation. If you ask a question, allow me to explain my answer, because these are technical issues.
I get it.
If you want to understand,
I need to follow you. I need to follow you.
But you're not even allowing me to lead you.
No, that's not true.
Allow me to lead you, then you will follow.
That's not
you see,
true. Go ahead.
when I said the authority, I was going to give you an analogy with the NCA.
Very well.
The NCA currently has technical capacity, okay, as a regulator, okay. So the Cybersecurity Authority will also have technical capacity. However, the NCA regulates ISPs and telcos. So the NCA is not in the business of providing me and you telecom services and data services. They've licensed private sector operators, MTN, Tigo. And then what the NCA does is it uses its technical capacity to regulate and monitor and be able to ensure that they're meeting KPIs. Now, what the cybersecurity and international best practice, that's what NCA is. The Cybersecurity Authority would also operate like that. It will not be responsible for fighting hacks. What it will do will be that it will regulate and license private sector players who would invest their own resource in providing cybersecurity services. Now, what the authority will do will be that it will be a regulator that gives licensing and certification for private sector people. So you don't need government taxes to provide those services, because you're not going to tell me that the Cybersecurity Authority is going to be responsible for providing cybersecurity services to ADB or to NIB or to Joy FM. No. Sam Joy should be able to set up a private company and say that I will offer my services to Joy FM to protect your cyberspace, your IT infrastructure. But I must be licensed to provide that service by somebody, and that is the authority. So you realize that the authority really doesn't have need for the kinds of monies that they tell us they are raising through this new tax. Because you are going to even be making revenue from the renewal of licenses, just like the NCA does.
So help me understand this line. Is it your position that, yes, we need more finances to boost our cybersecurity, but we do not need to increase taxes? Is that your position?
My position is simple. We need to continue to build our cybersecurity readiness. No country has attained self-sufficiency. The US, China, Russia keep getting hacked. Even Israel gets hacked. So nobody would ever say that, and I would never sit anywhere and say Ghana has attained cybersecurity self-sufficiency. Absolutely not. But all I'm saying is, with the current revenue expenditure of government, which I say is in excess of $1 billion Ghana cedis in 2019 on ICT, if government is only going to put in place proper measures to use the Electronic Transactions Act, the ETA, which sets up NITA, and uses that revenue, reallocates its expenditure in ICT, and harmonizes it under the Cybersecurity Authority, you already have 1 billion Ghana cedis this year alone. That has been approved by Parliament for agencies to go and buy all kinds of servers that they may not need.
And at that level, it's okay.
Where you can have a harmonized. So what I'm saying is, there's already a pool of money that exists that we are misusing in agencies.
I see.
Build an authority and let that authority be responsible for government expenditure in ICT, so that when National Health Insurance comes to Parliament and says that they're going to spend 30 million Ghana cedis this year to protect their ICT infrastructure, that money should be channeled through the Cybersecurity Authority to know how well that money is going to be used for a national set, because SNIT is also spending in that same region to protect. So you have all of these government agencies spending all kinds of monies, doing their own private things. It's just like the same situation you have with fingerprints, where SNIT has biometric data, Ministry of Finance has biometric data, police is trying to build biometric data.
That is being harmonized according to government.
Fantastic. So if you are now trying to harmonize and fix that problem, why create a different problem with cybersecurity?
All right, that's a conversation I'm sure we won't finish right now.
Tax the Ghanaian for it. But let me just draw your attention to one thing that you've all missed in the mid-year budget. Paragraph 135 on page 24, where the minister introduces the CST. Media houses are now being asked to charge CST. And what it is they're saying that all television and radio services must include CST now. So it means that, and the services you offer are adverts. So it means that when you're going to start billing people for adverts.
I have not seen that.
It's in the budget.
Okay.
I can read it to you. I have it here. I can just read exactly verbatim for you. But what it then means is that you are now going to have to charge CST, which is going to increase the cost of your
right.
Yeah. I'll just read. I'm just going to pull it up. I know we are running out of time, but
well.
I'm just going to read it so that it's not as though. But
so
like
whilst
I said,
you look for it, let me just do a quick back announcement. You're still watching Joy News.
Okay, I have it.
Pulse with me, Gifty and Opia. My guest is Sam Jata George. He's a member of Parliament for Ningo Pram Pram, and he's seeking re-election in their primaries, which comes up, he says, in 9 days. We're talking actually about communication tax and the fact that government says it is talking to the telcos to reduce how much we spend on data. And in fact, data cost is a big conversation in that industry. He says that he is contesting the vice president's announcement that they're actually having that conversation that will essentially reduce talk tax. Now you're talking about a part in the budget. In the budget that you said will mean media organizations will have to charge
CST.
Communication
Under communication service tax, it says the communication service tax CST was introduced in 2008 at an ad valorem rate of 6%. The tax is levied on charges payable by consumers for the use of communication services. However, its application has been limited to charges on per minute call and interconnectivity charges. In order to correct this policy gap and ensure equity in the communication industry, the tax will be applied to service charges paid by consumers for use of communication service in the television and radio broadcasting industry.
Well, I guess it needs a bit of explanation because it still doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't. It's.
Let me read it again.
No.
It's clear enough. It says in order. I'm reading just that question.
I get the television bit, but it doesn't break it down as to what exactly television
can I ask
stations will be paying.
Joy TV. What communication service do you offer?
No. Just explain yourself.
That's the point. The point I'm making is
I'm not seeing the link.
You won't see it because you don't have a technical eye.
Help me.
In order to correct this policy gap and ensure equity in the communication industry, the tax, which is the CST, will be applied to service charges paid by consumers for use of communication service in the television and radio broadcasting industry. The television and radio broadcasting industry offer communication services. Your communication services you offer are by way of adverts. Okay? And now it's saying that the tax will be applied to the service charge paid by your consumers. So it then means that all the people who place adverts with you, you are going to, by law, and we've passed that bill, the CST bill, the amendment has been done. It now means that by law, you are beholden as an entity, as a television and radio broadcasting industry entity, to charge CST.
Oh, we'll see about that. I'm still not quite clear. I'm still not quite clear in my mind.
And so it's just a way of opening the gap to get money for payment of debt.
And Sam George, but thank you so much for coming. I just want to finally ask what recommendations you made to governments when the telcos came to you as the Parliamentary Committee on Communications, and they told you, they're bleeding. Like
one of the things we said to government was to review the CST and actually review downwards. We actually thought that it should be reviewed down from 6% to maybe 4.5%. That would have offered a certain basis for government to demand a drop from the telcos. Okay, because we thought that if you looked at how much was being raked in by the CST at 6% and what it was being used for, which were not related to the communication service at all, a chunk of the monies that the 6% is used for youth employment.
Okay.
And
so
used for
based on that, you gave them this recommendation.
We're saying that these are things that the ministry should consider as by way of policy to ease the cost of data. Again, we said that government must bring in regulation on fiber cuts because you see the cost of repairing fiber for the telcos is very, very incidental on the cost of operating the service. So if government brings in regulation that protects the industry from fiber cuts, and they know that there's a kind of reinsurance program where if a government contractor cuts the fiber, government bears the cost, it drops the cost of operation.
But that didn't happen.
Well, what happened is an increase of 3%. We asked for a reduction of 1.5%. We asked for a reduction of 25%. We saw an increase of 50%.
I see. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. I'm sure that we'll need a lot more time.
After the campaign, I'll come and we'll discuss this more.
To digest this issue and to understand it properly so that our viewers and those who use data like myself will also have a better appreciation. But hopefully this does a bit of justice to, the subject matter. Sam George, I wish you all the best in your campaigns and in your election, your re-election bid. Sam Jasa George is Member of Parliament for Ningo Pram Pram, and also a member of the Communications Committee in Parliament, speaking about how much you and I are paying for data.